I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, Alexander. I left because I needed to find myself again. Her words hit him like a physical blow as he stood frozen in the doorway of the luxury penthouse he was supposed to be cleaning. The man she'd been avoiding for 2 years, her husband, one of the richest men in the country, had finally found her. If you're touched by this reunion already, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more emotional stories that explore the complicated nature of love, wealth, and identity. Alexander Chen had everything a man could want: a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, homes across the globe, and influence that opened any door. But for the past 2 years, he had been a shell of himself, haunted by the mysterious disappearance of his wife, Elise. The police had found no evidence of foul play. Her passport hadn't been used. Her personal accounts remained untouched. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air, leaving only a handwritten note: "I need space to breathe. Please don't look for me." But Alexander had never stopped searching. How could he? Elise had been his anchor since college, before the money and the fame. She was the brilliant mind who had helped him refine his revolutionary software, the warm presence who made their house a home, the woman whose laugh could instantly melt his stress away. The tabloids called it the most expensive manhunt in history, private investigators across continents, rewards that grew increasingly astronomical, all while Alexander's company's stock plummeted as investors questioned his mental stability. Every morning for 732 days, he woke up reaching for her side of the bed. Every night, he fell asleep scrolling through old photographs on his phone. The board of directors had threatened to remove him if he didn't move on and focus on the business. His friends had set him up on dates that he endured like torture sessions. His therapist suggested grief counseling for ambiguous loss. But Alexander knew in his heart that Elise was out there somewhere. She had to be. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. His new executive assistant, Mira, had recommended a cleaning service for his seldom-used Manhattan penthouse before an important investor meeting. He had barely glanced at the company name, Crystal Clear Cleaning Services, before approving it. Alexander hadn't planned to be there when the cleaners arrived. A last-minute cancelled flight had him returning to the penthouse hours earlier than expected. He stepped out of the private elevator, loosening his tie, when he saw her. Her back was turned to him as she organized cleaning supplies from a cart, her once long, flowing chestnut hair now cut into a practical bob. She wore a simple gray uniform with the company logo embroidered on the pocket. But Alexander would recognize the graceful curve of her neck, her delicate hands, anywhere in the world. "Elise?" His voice cracked, barely a whisper. She froze. For several heartbeats, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly, she turned around. Her eyes, those familiar hazel eyes that had once looked at him with such love, now widened in terror. Alex. Not Alexander, as everyone else called him. Just Alex, in that soft voice that had haunted his dreams. The moment stretched between them, 2 years of questions, pain, and longing compressed into a single, suspended second. Then Elise bolted for the door. Alexander moved without thinking, blocking her escape. He didn't touch her, he could see the panic in her eyes and it killed him, but he couldn't let her disappear again. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "Just talk to me. 5 minutes. Then if you want to go, I won't stop you. I promise." The woman who had once commanded boardrooms alongside him, who had charmed world leaders and industry titans at his side, now stood before him trembling in a maid's uniform, clutching a bottle of surface cleaner like a shield. "I can't do this," she whispered, but she didn't try to push past him. 2 years, Elise. 2 years of not knowing if you were alive or dead. You owe me 5 minutes. She flinched at his words but finally nodded. They moved to the living room, a space she had once decorated with such care, now feeling like a museum of their former life. She perched on the edge of the sofa, back straight, hands folded in her lap like a stranger at a job interview. "Are you okay?" Alexander asked, suddenly realizing that all his rehearsed questions and accusations seemed hollow now that she was actually in front of him. "I'm fine," she said automatically. Then, more honestly, "I'm better now. Better without him." The words she didn't say hung in the air between them. "Why?" he finally asked, the question that had consumed him for 24 months. "Was it something I did? Someone else? Were you in trouble? I would have helped you, protected you, given you anything." "That's exactly why I left," Elise interrupted, her voice stronger now. "You would have given me anything except the one thing I needed, the chance to be someone other than Alexander Chen's wife." Alexander felt like he'd been slapped. "I never thought of you that way." "No, but everyone else did." "I did, eventually. I woke up one morning and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. When was the last time I had made a decision that wasn't filtered through how it would affect you or the company? When had I last accomplished something that wasn't attached to your name? Everything we built together," Alexander protested. "And then you became the face of it all, the genius CEO, while I became the supportive wife who planned charity galas and smiled for photographs." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a weary resignation that somehow hurt him more. "I disappeared into your shadow until I couldn't remember who I was before you." Alexander wanted to argue, to list all the ways he had valued her, depended on her, loved her. But looking at her now, this new version of Elise with shorter hair and calloused hands and a steadiness in her gaze that he didn't recognize, he wondered if perhaps he had been blind to her slow disappearance. "So you clean houses now?" He tried to keep the judgment from his voice, but some slipped through. Elise's chin lifted slightly. "I started as a housekeeper at a small hotel in Queens. Now I'm the operations manager for Crystal Clear. I oversee 30 employees and handle all the high-profile client accounts." A flash of the old pride crossed her face. "I built something on my own, from nothing. No connections, no advantage, no safety net." "Under what name?" Alexander asked quietly. "Lisa Carter." She hesitated. "I didn't file for divorce because I knew you would find me through the paperwork." The word divorce hit him like a physical blow. "Is that what you want?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "I don't know what I want. I just know I needed to find out who I am without you." "And who is that person?" "Lisa Carter, the cleaning lady?" She flinched at his tone. "Elise Chen couldn't order coffee without someone recognizing her as your wife. Lisa Carter built a life where every achievement, every mistake, every decision was completely her own." Alexander ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. 2 years of imagining kidnappers, amnesia, even death, none of his scenarios had prepared him for this. His wife had chosen to disappear, to become someone else, rather than stay with him. "Were you ever going to tell me you were alive? Or were you just going to let me search forever?" The pain in his voice was raw. Elise's eyes filled with tears for the first time. "I thought about contacting you so many times. But I was afraid." "Afraid of me?" The idea was staggering. "No. Afraid of myself. Afraid that one word from you would make me give up everything I've worked for these past 2 years and fall right back into being an extension of you." The silence that followed her confession was heavy with everything unsaid. Alexander looked around the penthouse, the space that had once been their home, now feeling hollow and staged, like a movie set of someone else's life. "I haven't been living either," he admitted quietly. "The company's struggling. The board thinks I'm obsessed. Maybe I was. Am." He looked directly into her eyes. "I never stopped loving you, Elise." She closed her eyes briefly at his words. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, Alexander. I left because I needed to find myself again." Her words broke him in ways that 2 years of searching never had. Because he recognized the truth in them. Because for the first time, he saw his role in her disappearance. Because despite his billions, he couldn't buy back the years she needed away from him. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Elise glanced at her watch, a simple timepiece that had replaced the custom diamond Patek Philippe he had given her for their anniversary. "Now I need to finish cleaning this penthouse. I have 2 more jobs today." Alexander almost laughed at the absurdity, but the determination in her eyes stopped him. "And after that?" "I don't know." She stood, smoothing down her uniform. "But I do know we can't go back to how things were." "I don't want to lose you again," he said, the words catching in his throat. Something softened in her expression. "Maybe we could talk sometimes. Start there." She hesitated. "I'm not Lisa Carter. But I'm not the same Elise you knew, either." "I want to know this Elise," Alexander said, meaning it more than anything he'd ever said. "If you'll let me." That afternoon marked the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. Alexander didn't announce to the world that he had found his missing wife. Elise didn't move back into their penthouse or return to her old life. Instead, they started the painful, beautiful process of getting to know each other again. Alexander came to understand the suffocation Elise had felt in the gilded cage of their life together. He watched with growing respect as she showed him the business she had built, the people who respected her for her work ethic and intelligence rather than her husband's name. For the first time, he saw her as completely separate from himself, not an extension, not a complementary piece, but a whole, complete person with dreams and capabilities he had never fully appreciated. Elise, in turn, allowed herself to remember the man she had fallen in love with before the billions, the passionate, brilliant Alexander whose mind had first attracted her, whose kindness had made her feel safe, whose ambition had inspired her own. She saw his humility as he asked about her work, his genuine interest as he met her employees, his vulnerability as he shared how deeply her absence had changed him. They met for coffee in small Brooklyn cafes where no one recognized them. They walked through city parks discussing everything from business strategies to favorite books to painful childhood memories they had never shared before. They argued and apologized and laughed in ways they hadn't during their marriage. 6 months after that fateful cleaning appointment, Elise invited Alexander to her small apartment in Astoria. It wasn't much, a 1-bedroom walk-up with furniture from second-hand stores and plants crowding every windowsill. But as Alexander looked around, he saw her everywhere, in the color-coded bookshelf, in the meticulously organized kitchen, in the hand-painted mural on her bedroom wall. "This is really you," he said, understanding blooming in his chest. "Parts of me I never got to explore before," she agreed. "But yes, this is me." That night, they talked until dawn about possibilities. Not a return to their old life, but perhaps something new, a relationship where they could each maintain their independence while building something together. Where Elise could continue growing her business without being overshadowed. Where Alexander could love her without trying to contain her. The journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks and painful revelations. Alexander had to face his own controlling tendencies, his unconscious assumption that his wealth entitled him to dictate their life together. Elise had to confront her resentment and fear, her habit of silencing her own needs rather than communicating them. A year after their reunion, Elise Chen returned to public life, not as the billionaire's mysterious wife who had disappeared, but as the founder and CEO of a rapidly expanding cleaning service empire that specialized in eco-friendly practices and fair wages for domestic workers. The press was fascinated by her transformation, by the woman who had walked away from billions to scrub toilets and emerged as a successful entrepreneur in her own right. Alexander attended the opening of her first flagship training center as her guest, not as her husband. The pride in his eyes as he watched her cut the ribbon was matched only by the love in hers when she acknowledged him in her speech, not as the source of her success, but as the person who had learned to love her enough to let her go, and then to welcome her back on her own terms. They remarried on a Tuesday afternoon at City Hall, with only Elise's employees and Alexander's closest friends as witnesses. No designer gown, no media coverage, no elaborate reception. Just two people who had lost each other and found their way back, not to where they had been, but to somewhere new and stronger. As they left the courthouse, hand in hand, a young reporter recognized them and called out, "Mr. Chen. Is it true you found your wife working as a maid? How does it feel to have her back in your world?" Alexander looked at Elise, at the woman who had broken him and remade him into someone better. She smiled and answered before he could. "He didn't bring me back to his world," she said. "We created a new one together." In a culture that celebrates wealth and status above all else, Elise and Alexander's story reminds us of a profound truth: true love isn't about possession or perfection. It's about seeing someone completely, their needs, their dreams, their struggles, and being brave enough to let them become who they need to be, even when that journey takes them away from you. Sometimes, finding yourself means losing everything you thought you wanted, only to discover what you truly need. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more content that explores the complexities of love, identity, and personal growth. Remember that every relationship requires not just love, but understanding, respect, and the courage to let each person evolve into their truest self.